Hey, my friends, welcome to a new episode of Storytellers and Wild Creatives. I'm your host, Sage Adderley, and today I'm so stoked to have author and adventurer Heidi Siefkes with us today. I first met Heidi, I don't even know how many years ago it was. It feels like a really long time. We can discover that in a moment. Like I don't know how long it is, but it was in this, it almost feels like a different lifetime ago. When my sole focus was book marketing for indie authors and small presses and traditional publishers. And that's where I connected with Heidi initially. And for the marketing of her book, When All Balls Drop, which is an amazing story. We could also talk more about that. But most recently, Heidi has published her newest release called Look Up Global Stories of Resilience. It's amazing. And I mean, not just because I got a little piece in there. It's amazing regardless. Because resilience is a huge, I mean, those of you who know me and follow me, like you know how important the showing up pieces for me. And so I'm going to stop talking and shift it over. I'm going to give Heidi the talking stick. I'm just really excited to have this conversation. So, Heidi, oh, hey.
I'm excited to be here too. Sage and I have known each other since 2014.
Whoa, I knew it was a long time, but
So
wow.
that was the year that I published When All Balls Drop, and I was new to marketing books and how everything worked. And we
Oh,
connected then, and we reconnected with, I believe, this book because I never let go of the connection on social media as well as email.
yeah, which I'm so grateful for because as soon as I heard about it, I was like, oh my gosh, I got a story. I think I think I got a story. So I just want to talk about what brought you to the point of Look Up. I mean, I remember Look Up from your first book, right? The mantra. And I love how you have just continued the thread of Look Up. So first, I would love if you would share, especially for those who are listening or watching this, um, tell me about your first book and kind of how you got into to publishing and why.
So the book When All Balls Drop is my personal account of a full-blown life catastrophe that happened in my D-Day year. I think back then we called it 2009. It's hard to go back, and now we use 2024, 2025.
Yeah.
So that year I had a life-threatening accident, and it had a ripple effect. So I was struck by a 1,000-pound tree limb, which broke my neck. So I was physically handicapped for about a year. And during which time I found out that my husband was living a double life and my high-powered career disappeared. So it was a trifecta of loss. And coming out the other side of that, I had a choice, and it was to reconstruct what was previous, which wasn't working, or to architect a new life. And I decided on the latter and chose a new life. But stepping into that life, I didn't want to lose sight of the lesson that I learned through all of that. And I summarized that lesson into two words, and they're a double entendre: look up. So basically, be in the moment, look up from whatever you're doing and appreciate the beauty around you, as well as hazards like a 1,000-pound tree limb, and the second meaning is find the upside. So find that silver lining, the lemonade out of lemons, or let's face it, it's today is a Friday. Whenever you're watching this, feel free to make margaritas.
Mission.
So that's where lookup came from. And then I have, throughout my other books, always had a lookup thread to them, but it was always my story that was incorporating lookup. And through sharing it, through whether it was my TED Talks or book clubs or at dinner with connections, people would share their intimate stories of overcoming obstacles or combinations of obstacles. And I realized that they had look-up stories in them, and many of which didn't feel comfortable sharing in a full-blown book.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I never thought about it that way. I could see the piece about wanting to share and like almost find that connection, that witnessing, but not wanting to embark on like a super vulnerable, visible journey of writing a memoir or a story about whatever it was they experienced. So, what a gift that they could, give their story, which I think our stories are our gifts, that they could give in that way. And you were kind of like the story tender. I love this. You like held it. And you said one of my favorite words, which I just want to like bring that thread in, is you said choice. And I think that is so powerful, no matter what the situation might be, not losing sight that we have choice. And I'm curious, before the accident, did you have that fierce of like a perspective about having choice and turning things around? What was it like before?
I think I have always believed that I had a choice because of my upbringing, being born in the United States and being raised by a family that created women and men equally. Um, and having a positive spin on things. But I think I kind of went to ground zero during losing a lot of the aspects of my life. And
Mhm.
it almost took all the societal filters away that I'm going to be truthful. I was pursuing kind of the societal dream. Find your love, find your career, have your home, your two cars, the white picket fence. That was what I was pursuing. And it wasn't really the right path for me. And look up kind of reinforces that all we have is this moment, and you can reevaluate or choose by the moment. So,
It's like a rebirth moment. Like you've already
yes.
been born and lived this life, and then you have that moment, that upheaval, that totally getting the carpet ripped out from underneath you. And then it's like, whoa. And so when you said ground zero, I was like, yeah, it's totally what it's like. So,
And
oh, go ahead.
a lot of people say, how can you learn to do this without having 1,000-pound tree limb or some other horrific event or diagnosis? And it is tapping into that power of perspective, which Look Up kind of reminds us about. But other things can allow you to tap into perspective, whether that's meditation. I also feel like going on an adventure, you throw yourself into something that's so new that you're so focused on it, you can't think about all the other things that clutter up our daily lives.
Right. Yeah, and what a beautiful thing that like I don't want people to experience tragedies and traumas to like see the other side. But it's interesting, I have noticed just with my experience with people like the both of us who have experienced, I mean, millions of people obviously have experienced tragedies and traumas. But I find when I'm listening to their stories, there's such clarity. It's almost like a no-brainer for most folks of like the look up vibe and embodying that whole essence. And so I think for folks who maybe haven't had as big of an upheaval, like, yes, read these stories. Don't feel like you have to go through something big to be like, it's my time to live now. Embrace it now. You have to wait for a tragedy. Don't. So tell me about the journey of writing Lookup. What was that like?
So I have to give credit that I participated in another compilation book in 2021, and that inspired me to do a collection of stories that weren't mine, as well as getting the feedback from readers of my books or attendees of talks that shared with me their stories. And I was like, this is much bigger than my story. This has really legs to impact millions, but it needs to have more than one voice. And so that is where the light bulb moment happened in 2021. So at the turn of the new year, 2022, I went on this door knocking, social media panning to find people that had these comeback kid stories. And at lightning speed, I had people that said, yes, I want to participate. By very close to the tail end of that year, I had 15 chapters written. And I was like, I think I need probably mid-20s to complete it. But I was so shocked and awed that I had so much acceptance. Then life threw me another curveball. So after my rebirth and I was embarking on Life 2.0, 2010, I found my life partner, and his name was Brian, and we had been living together for, at that time, 12 years, and we were living in beautiful Maui. And his profession was a pilot, and unfortunately, it's a dangerous career. And at the end of 2022, he crashed into the Pacific, and I lost my life partner. So
Sorry.
I didn't know where or how
Mhm.
to pick up the pieces, but I am ever grateful for the tree clobbering me many, many years ago, because it was having that knowledge that helped me crawl over the next year or plus to regain any resemblance of life as I know it now.
Yeah.
So I unfortunately had to press pause to focus on other things.
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things that you shared with me when I interviewed you previous to Brian's passing,
Mhm.
and you spoke about your loss.
Mhm.
And one of the things that you said is people didn't know how to react to you after that.
Yeah.
They wouldn't look you in the eye. And you kind of vocalized some frustration. I'm sorry that my grief makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I felt that time and time again, and still do when I'm encountering someone for the first time since it's happened.
Yeah.
But Brian was the epitome of look up. He was in the moment always, living life to its fullest. And many people think that I am writing, or restarted the project because of Brian. And yes, there is a component of that, that he would want me not to stop. He would be celebrating this right now. Um,
Yeah.
but it is larger than myself. It's larger than Brian and I's love for one another.
Yeah.
And I'm now realizing that after restarting the project in 2024 and getting bigger and bolder um, requests of people, because now it's not the, I don't want to say common traumas, but I wanted it to be very well rounded. So I was looking for people that had survived fires, people
Mhm.
that had escaped war, people that had immigrated to the States, and even things that are a little taboo,
Mhm.
gender issues.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it started in Maui, the
Yeah.
writing, and it ended in Nashville, where I call home, because I needed to move off the island where the accident happened to start a new chapter, or let's face it, a whole nother series.
I mean, it had to be so surreal to be writing this book and then to have this happen in your life. Like, I'm just blown away that you came back to it. And I'm not blown away because I know who you are from what you've written previously. And I think that's why I have so much respect for you. Um, because you had a choice. Nobody would have criticized you or been upset with you if you were like, you know what? I'm at capacity. I can't do this. And like, you did what you needed to do for yourself. And then you made the choice, my favorite word. Like, you made that choice. And I just think that's so beautiful. I just, yes, I love it. So, what was it like to hold space for such intimate emotional stories?
The first thing I have to say is that I felt honored
Mhm.
that I was hearing the stories and allowed to almost cradle them,
Yeah.
regardless of how comfortable the person was with the sharing of the story. There were tears shed or some shaky voice moments. And I'm going to couple the word honored with I was petrified
Mm.
because every time that I press send on someone's completed chapter, I was so nervous that they were going to think that I didn't represent their story correctly, accurately, with honor to make them feel proud about it. So I typically gave people a very flexible timeline to approve and give me their feedback and edits. But I was always fearful that someone was going to come back and say, this is crap. You turned
Yeah.
my story into blasphemy. This isn't accurate. I don't want to participate. But no one came back like that. But that was what I was fearful of, is that they weren't going to feel honored by what I had crafted.
Yeah.
And that remained almost up to the publishing date because after, for example, you approved your chapter, then I go to the editorial phase that I have someone going through to finesse,
Yeah.
and the editor did a great job, I think, of doing minimalistic editing, but I still wanted everyone to look at their chapter before it goes to print. But with having that gap of having a couple years, some people have had life changes or their chapters have turned upside down. And I didn't anticipate that maybe there would be some late in the process, eh, I'm not quite sure, or I need to tell you something. You need to put this in there before it's published. So it's I was honored, but I was petrified. And now I'm still a little bit fearful because all of my writing up to this point has been my story, and I've been exposing myself vulnerable, as naked to the world
Yeah.
as I could. Now it's going to be the reaction of the people that have contributed their stories
Yeah.
to how they feel about seeing it printed and now other people reading their stories. So that is over the next probably month or so. I
Mhm.
imagine I will hear from most of the people that participated about how this has impacted them as well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I mean, I was one of those humans that was like, so life's been lifing. Life's been doing what it does. And I just want to say, I shared a little bit of this when I got my copy, and I was when you had started sending emails, kind of preparing us, like,
Yeah.
all right, it's coming, right? And I remember like one of those first emails, I just got this moment of like, oh no, like this project I was so excited to be a part of now. And for those of you listening, just quick context is in the interview that I did with Heidi, I shared about when my husband Bradley had passed away. And then 2 years later, I had gotten into a new relationship. And 6 months into that relationship, he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I became his caretaker. Well, I was with him when I did the interview with Heidi. And then it was like we did the interview fallish, and it was January of the next year, 2023, that he chose out of our relationship. And so I was like, oh man, like it just brought this like flood of new feelings of like, I'm just openly talking about it because it was shame. It was shame of just like, God, another tragedy within a tragedy, another like, feeling like, God, another crap part of a story, my story. You know what I mean? Like it didn't feel empowering in that moment. And I'm so grateful for all of like the growth work that I've done over the years, like years and years of it. And this voice just came and was like, you were absolutely like grounded and being your best self in the interview. You were being truthful. Everything that you shared was your story. Like that was real. And just because it didn't end the way you imagined doesn't make that story any less valuable to be a part of. And so it felt good to go from like super like shame storming, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is, now I have to face and people will know, and not like it's some giant secret, but you just shame just spirals out. But then to come full circle in this moment of being really proud of 2022 Sage and 2023 Sage and being like, I still choose love and I still choose possibility and I still choose to be vulnerable and be like, hey, this is what life looks like. It's messy and it doesn't always end up the way that you imagine, but look at what's possible. Like, look what you have created. Look what I continue to create. Like, we continue to choose to show up for ourselves and for others. And so then I was like, I shifted into, yes, I'm going to tell all the people about Look Up. I mean, I was going to tell them about it anyway, Heidi. There was never a moment I was not going to tell the people, but I was just having to shift how I felt about myself. So I'm glad to hear I wasn't the only one that had some shifting happening.
Yes. In fact, I had one contributor that was like, do you use my real name? And I was like, oh,
Oh,
yes. This was,
yeah.
well down the publishing line. Amazon already has the files, and
Oh,
it was just kind of the reality came at that point.
wow.
And um, since we have talked and she's completely comfortable with it, but it took a bit of having a conversation as to why she did it in the first place
Yeah.
and why sharing with others is really the way that we connect with other human beings, can
Yeah.
learn from one another, and sharing is scary, but on the other side of scared is being a badass.
It's true. It's true. There's another side to it. And I just want to say, like, I really appreciated how easy and kind you were about that because I was nervous because I was on my end going, I don't want to disrupt her process. Like, I didn't want to, make anything harder for you by asking for some changes. And you were just like, done. It was just, it was such a relief. Like, I really appreciated that because I was already beating myself up for wanting to change, of just a few things. And I have been in a position before where somebody had shared my story, and they didn't have me read it before they published, and there was inaccuracies, and it was such a terrible feeling of like not having control over your own story, your own narrative. And so I was so thankful for how you showed up in this experience. Um, because it feels terrible. It feels terrible to have someone publish things that aren't true. And even what might be minor to someone else when it's your story is massive. So I really do appreciate that you gave each one of us an opportunity to read it before it went out there, because it is such a big deal.
Yeah. And as I said, about feedback that I'm going to get from all of the chapter contributors, because some of the extroverts are going to be like, oh, I'm going to share it with everybody.
Right.
You know, and then there's going to be some introverts that said, I'm glad I did that. And now I'm going to put my copy on my bookshelf and no one will know that I contributed to it. Or,
Yeah,
there'll be a myriad of reactions, but
yeah,
I'm hoping with time that everyone feels just that it was a rewarding experience.
totally.
And perhaps when they hear others' feedback about their chapter, they also, feel that they're impacting others.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, especially I think in the climate of the world where people want to do things that matter and they don't know what to do. And what a beautiful way to like have some movement in making impact. So you gave us that opportunity. So thank you for that. Um, so what is your vision of where Look Up gets to go? What's the ripple effect look like of all these awesome stories? And I say awesome not because they like I know there's tragedy, but I find it awesome when people find like possibility after tragedy. So just saying that. I also over explain.
my hope is that it impacts millions. I'm not aiming for hundreds, thousands. I want millions. And I hope that it transforms from perhaps written words into maybe podcast series, different languages, different formats, because I know that although I love written words, that's not the way to necessarily communicate to everyone. So I think it morphing into different types of lookup stories in different languages, maybe visual stories, maybe podcast interviews. That's where I think it's going, as well as maybe another edition, look up version
Yeah.
2026. Who knows? So
It's
that would be ambitious, but
so like if there was a writer here saying, Heidi, how do I share my personal story when I'm afraid? Like how do I do it anyway?
I try to explain it that everything that's worth doing sparks some fear. Telling someone that you love them because you're fearful that they're not going to say that they love you back, that's putting yourself out there. And writing a book is certainly, if you're putting your name on it and being completely authentic, that is definitely fearful. But hopefully, at the tail end of that journey, you find that it's worthwhile. Um, there's a lot of fear in sharing your truth,
Mm.
but there's also a lot of freedom after you do it.
Yeah.
And that's why I wanted to make sure everyone felt super 110% comfortable with what their story was, because I was kind of the shepherd of some very, not memoirs, but very crucial pivot points in people's lives.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's a both and where it's extremely tender stuff and heartbreaking stuff, and you're putting it on a platter for people that you don't know to like read and have opinions about. And so it is, I think, a process to get used to the idea that you can't really control how others think. And I think that's why it's so important to really be proud of it. Really be proud of it. So it's like no matter what anybody might think of anything, it's you're unshakable with how you feel. And I think it's practice. I think that's practice. I wish it was like a light switch where it's like, this is how I feel now. I don't think it is, but I agree with you 100%. It's so liberating to not have to hold it on your own. It's like this ability to say, here's a piece of it. If you want to be a part of that, like here it is. And it's very freeing.
In my younger years, after my first full-blown life accident, I wasn't comfortable sharing it for quite a few years.
Mhm.
But what I've learned is that if people don't accept that I've had this happen to me and I've overcome it and don't see me as a stronger person because of it,
Yeah.
belong in my life. And
Yeah.
I started calling myself that I had an honorary doctorate from the School of Hard Knocks after getting knocked out with the tree limb.
Mhm.
But now I think that I'm an honorary doctorate and I'm going to give myself the PhD of Dr. Badass because
I love
I,
it.
I deserve that title.
Yeah.
And it's because it took courage to tell the story. And I am right now telling the story about losing my life partner, but I'm not at that time to write the book yet. So I understand how the people that are perhaps on the fence about sharing, I would say just start writing it, and then you can make the decision when you're ready to release it.
I think that's great advice. Yeah. Sometimes it's like you got to write it just for yourself
Mhm.
and then not even worry about what anybody's going to think or how they're going to perceive it. And then you'll know. Like you'll get to that point where you just know like, okay, I think I'm ready for that next step of sharing this. So, speaking of sharing,
Yes.
I am like on a mission to be vocal about how folks can support authors. No beating around the bush. We're being direct, asking for what we need as authors. So, how can people support you, Heidi? How can they support Look Up?
Basically, I need the masses to purchase the book. Um, I do have it on Amazon. That is the best way to support me right now, but also it is listed with Ingram, so you can get it at your favorite online sellers or your local bookstores. With a purchase, I would like people to enjoy the book, absorb it, review it if you feel that it's up your alley, gift it to someone who could use some uplifting words. And I feel like after those two measures, another way that you could kind of have fun with it is this cover is beautiful.
Yes,
It's spectacular. And you can see the neon sign behind
I
me.
know.
It was the inspiration for the chapter heads, because I just like the sunset that it kind of
Yeah.
looks like it's coming out of the ocean. So that was the Maui component of it. But if you would like to connect with me on social media and send a little picture of you looking up from your book, I would love it because, I mean, that's communicating look up already. That I'm reading a book and you know what? I'm looking up because I'm either pondering something that it sparked me to think more about, or maybe the spring blooms are above me in a tree. So,
Yes. Yes,
but
I love
the
that.
tree limbs not falling.
Hey, we're laughing now. We're laughing.
Yeah.
There's
So buy the book, review the book, and take a picture of the book and connect with me on social media.
Yes. Yes, there's so many ways. And I just really want to keep talking about it because I think honestly, more than ever, I mean, I've been doing book marketing for a long time, and I think it's not, I don't think it's getting easier. And so I just want to be completely direct with people and be like, hey, here's some great ways you can support me. And I know asking for that can be hard, but that's why I'm like, all the ways we can support Heidi, because especially for those of you out there wanting to write a book, or maybe you're in the process of writing a book, you're going to get to this stage where you want people to read the book and you want to be, you want to get it out there. And so I just think it's win-win energy um, to support each other, supporting our stories and voices, whatever the format is. So I'm going to keep sharing, Heidi, because I think you're awesome. And I feel so stoked that I got to be a part of this book, and that I know you. Like I was telling a friend today, like I was telling her about you and interviewing you today. And I said, like Heidi is that energy that I want to surround myself with people who have seen, have been through the dark night of the soul. And they're like, I'm still going to choose to live my life. And you're taking it a step further and creating impact, creating the ripple out for others. So I really thank you from the bottom of my heart for doing what you do. And before we end this party, is there anything you'd like to add or say to our listeners?
I guess think a little bit outside of the box. You may know groups or maybe departments of healthcare organizations, universities, community organizations that would benefit from reading this. I am available to show up online as well as in person for Q&A, and if it's in the right geographic region, there are contributors from Washington to Wisconsin to Hawaii to Florida to even overseas that could participate in maybe a panel discussion, you know?
Mhm.
So uh, just think out of the box as to how you could help spread it.
I love it. There's so many ideas. There's so many ways. And I'm thinking over here like, oh, I could buy a copy and put it in a little free library. Like,
Yeah,
like how amazing somebody's just walking and they open the doors and there's look up, and of course the cover is going to grab them. And I mean, there's so many ways that we can spread the word. So I'll be doing my part, and I know we got some listeners doing their part. And I just, again, thank you so much, Heidi, for taking the time to share with us, and for putting this work out into the world.
you're so welcome. Thank you for participating.
Yeah,
Here's to looking up always.
always. All right, friends, Heidi's info is going to be in the description so that you can connect with her, and a link to purchase your own copy of Look Up and leave a review. All right, we'll see you next time.